Now, they decided on their own, and we were fairly early at that time in our work, so we didn't have some firm protection methods with costs to identify for them, but they were interested in operational methods to mitigate the effects of a geomagnetic storm where you could see it coming. You'd have maybe 10 or 15 minutes notice, and they had procedures which we helped them develop to try to have their grid survive.
But they still need work on the transformer, don't they?
Oh, yeah. That's what I meant. We had not gotten to the point when we dealt with them and worked with them to have that in hand. We now have the techniques, and we're looking at developing the prototypes and demonstrating them to make sure that everything works as we hope. Once that's done, then that will be available for people to apply.
What do you think the timeline could be to getting England ready?
Well, I'm mentioning England in the past. I don't know that they would be any more interested, even though it's only one company, versus the United States. But I'm trying to remember for the United States, I think for the transformers, and this is an estimate that the EMP Commission made with our input. We provided them data, and they made the estimate. But I recall that the number was on the order of $300 or $400 million, which these days doesn't sound like very much.
England, as you know, suffers from inclement, very, very cold weather. Very, very cold.
Yes.
I mean, there are a lot of people that are dying there now anyway because it's so cold. And in some parts of the world, it is getting colder and colder. So one would think that this could be ushered in and actually done. My question to you is, let's say the people in charge of the power grid or the company in charge of the power grid in England came to you and said, okay, Bill, we're ready. Whatever it is, how long would it take to get us suited up?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. We need about 2 years to finish the prototype demonstration. I mean, if someone said it was an emergency and had to go right now, there are designs available that could be tried, but it would be better to have everything fully demonstrated and make sure the best solution is selected. But I would think the kind of equipment we're talking about is not very sophisticated or long lead time construction to build like a transformer itself. The protection is something that's quite available. I mean, I would think it's something that could be, probably the installation time would be much longer than the build time, actually, in a factory. So, it's probably something that could be done in a year or so once the products were available. And these are just normal types of equipment that is, that you can find in any power grid already: capacitors, resistors, surge arrestors. There's nothing new here. It's just how it's put together to handle a particular threat. In this case, geomagnetic storms and the late time EMP. So it's not a huge undertaking. The reason for the work that we're doing is to make sure the best engineering solution is developed and is available.
The reason I asked you about a real application is that I think sometimes when people talk about subjects like this, it seems like such a far-off thing. And yet when you bring it in and you say, okay, and people get it, and people in positions that have the authority to say, yes, let's go, we get it. Yeah, I wanted them to hear how long it could be, that it could be a year to have the prototype ready and then maybe another year for install or however you explained it.
Right.
But do you think that the install, that time frame could be shortened?
Well, it would have to be shortened by having many, many crews. We have in the United States more than 5,000 very high voltage, extremely high voltage transformers. Even if you can install one a day, you'd have to have a lot of crews. Otherwise, it's going to take you 5,000 days. Obviously, when this gets going, there should be a lot of companies and a lot of installers available.
Is it dangerous to be an installer for this?
No, not particularly. No, it's not. These devices are not put on the high voltage portion of the transformer. They're put on the neutral. So it's not. I mean, some caution. People have to have training and so forth, but it's not. How should I say? It's not rocket science.
If England said, "Look, we're ready to start in March or April," it would be a year for building it. Could you install it by 2011?
Well, I think that's, again, we're recommending that, that the device be well engineered and tested before anybody implements it. Otherwise, mistakes might be made, non-optimum solutions may come about, and
got it.
So it really, unless there were a real urgency, and I don't, no one knows the urgency. Some people say, well, you want to make sure you're ready for the next geomagnetic storm cycle. Well, that turns out not to be correct either, because big geomagnetic storms can occur anywhere.
Right, at any time.
The sunspot cycle. That's one of the tricky things. The sunspot cycle is the number of sunspots. It does not directly control all of the other events that can occur on the sun, which can cause problems for us. And I'm sure John explained there.
I just learned that today talking to him. That was
right.
Very interesting. Very, very interesting. That means really we're in the window at any time for this too.
Yes, and we really don't understand, in looking at the history of geomagnetic storms, the data that we have available, there is no strong correlation to a large number of sunspots in a certain cycle creating more geomagnetic storms, or those with smaller numbers creating less. We just don't have a long enough database, mainly because we've only had satellites since the late 50s. So, you need many, many cycles to try to understand what the sun is doing.
Is there anything else you'd like to share with the audiences today?
Well, I think you hit on it here toward the end. We know how to do this kind of protection, and I think the strategy of protecting individual facilities and buildings can be effective. And people should remember that we're not just talking about a high-altitude nuclear event, but also the use of these electromagnetic weapons, which are becoming ubiquitous. You can go to the internet and pull them down. Anybody with an engineering degree that wants to cause trouble for someone could figure out how to build these things. You can take a microwave oven apart and make it into a weapon. And with this, you can sit in somebody's parking lot and shut them down, but not anybody else. So this is not an issue for the federal government. This is an issue for normal security. It's not normal because it's an invisible electromagnetic wave, but it exists today. And so, and the bonus is that once you protect to this problem, you're also protecting yourself from the high-altitude EMP, the high-frequency part. The other part, the power grid and everything, it needs a separate protection for the transformers. And it's not affected directly by these electromagnetic weapons, not the transformers. So, there are a lot of problems out there, but there are solutions available today. And we're trying to tell people that we can help them do that protection.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have been speaking with Bill Radasky, the founder and president of Metatech Corporation in Goleta, California. It has been a real honor to have you on the show, and I hope that you will come back and visit us again and share updates with us, and we'll have newly formed questions for you. And thank you so much for your time today.
Okay, you're welcome, Kim. It was a pleasure.
Pleasure here.